Hi, I'm Femi OK. On this episode of The Stream, we are going to be talking about rape and sexual violence. If this is not what you want to watch right now, I'm going to give you a moment to be able to walk away from the screen. There have been widespread reports of sexual violence coming out of the Tigray region of Ethiopia. That's in the northern part of Ethiopia. Since November, government forces, Eritrean soldiers and Tigrayan soldiers have been caught up in a conflict. And in the middle of that, women and girls have been subjected to horrific human rights abuses and sexual violence. I want to give you one example. This young woman was going to get groceries for her children, her two young children. She was pulled off a bus and then gang raped for 11 days. Here's her story.
He said to me, "Listen to me, you go where we tell you to go. Otherwise, we will blast your belly out with this knife. We don't want to waste any of the bullets. We will cut your throat with this knife." Then I screamed out.
Villagers found her unconscious and bleeding. She had a broken leg and severe internal injuries. At the hospital, doctors removed blood-soaked items, including nails, that soldiers forced into her body after she was raped.
I have spent a month in this hospital. I'm receiving treatment. My legs do not move. They are broken. My back is also broken. Let alone moving, I can't even get up. I cannot control my urine. There is a mix of urine and blood coming out of me. The enemy has destroyed my life.
That is just one woman's story. How many other women and little girls are being subjected to sexual violence like that in the Tigray region? The three guests you're about to meet will help us understand what is going on. Meaza, Saina, Madiha, thank you so much for being on the stream today. A really awful topic to talk about. Meaza, first of all, introduce yourself to our stream audience.
My name is Meaza. I am a researcher and a human rights activist from Tigray.
Thank you so much for being with us. Saina, introduce yourself to our stream audience. Tell them who you are, what you do.
Hi, Fami. Thank you for having me on this show. My name is Saina Jimjimo. I am the Executive Director for Oromo Legacy Leadership and Advocacy in a human rights and women rights organization.
Thank you for being here. And Madiha, welcome to the stream. Introduce yourself to our global audience.
Hi, my name is Madiha. I'm the Senior Global Communications Officer for Africa and Yemen at the International Rescue Committee.
Madiha, I'm going to come to you in just a moment, but I also want to tell our audience that we reached out to the Prime Minister's office, Abiy Ahmed's office, and asked them if they would take part in this programme. They didn't respond to any of our requests, our invitations, but I want to say there is a standing invitation for the Prime Minister's office to be part of any stream programme when we are talking about Ethiopia. Also, if you're on YouTube, if you're commenting, you are very welcome to be in this programme. I know you have many opinions, and jump into the comment section, be part of today's discussion. Madiha, I really want to get to sense of what is happening to women and girls and the extent of the sexual violence, the extent of the rapes. Can you share some of the stories that you know are absolutely happening?
Sure. So 6 months on now from the start of the conflict, in the Tigray region, there have been widespread reports of sexual violence and abuse in and around Tigray because of the conflict, as well as a number of different ways in which women are generally being impacted because of the crisis, which we can get on to later. I've been on both sides of the border in Tigray itself, as well as in East Sudan, where over 60,000 refugees from Tigray have fled to. And I've spoken to many of the displaced people within the camps in Tigray, as well as over the border in East Sudan, and pretty much everyone I spoke to recounted multiple accounts of having witnessed or heard of gang rape happening in Tigray, as well as countless evidence of other abuses as well on women and girls. Furthermore, a recent gender analysis that the International Rescue Committee did just found that women are, as in any humanitarian crisis, are bearing the brunt of this crisis.
Meaza, as a Tigray activist, and you're looking at this situation in your home region, and what are you seeing? What are you hearing, particularly when it's involving women and girls?
We continue to hear how weaponized rape is being used as a deliberate strategy to shame, torture, and harm not only the women and girls of Tigray, but also the Tigrayan community in general. We also hear that weaponized rape alongside other war tactics is being used to erase and cleanse the Tigrayan identity and the people. So clearly the sexual violence, the weaponized rape, it's increasing day by day. And the brave survivors that were, able to tell their stories, to speak with journalists, are facing a very mounting harassment and attack by the illegitimate Ethiopian government and its cronies within Ethiopia in Tigray.
Zaina, how much official acknowledgement has there been about these rapes, these attacks actually happening?
Fahmi, thank you for that question. As Meaza has said, the situation in Tigray is extremely, extremely sad. But the reality is, I may as well say, is that this is across, particularly between Oromia and Tigray. It is a situation that my organization, I'm very concerned about it. Since 2018, since Abiy came to power, he have been raping, that have been used by Ethiopian soldiers across Ethiopia, especially in Oromia as well as Tigray. Is obviously the international community is paying attention. In 2018 alone, Ethiopian Amnesty International document, there was a rape, there was a extrajudiciary killing in particularly Guji area, but unfortunately that issue is not being talked about, and that's really what I want to really talk about. Of course, in addition to the report that is getting in Tigray and what the women of Tigray is facing as Ethiopian, obviously we are beyond disbelief that Ethiopian soldiers will commit this, but it's really nothing new. Abiy have used a rape as a weapon of war to really punish the women, the girls, and the issue is not being discussed is the issue about the Oromian women.
I see, Meaza, you're nodding your head. Go ahead, articulate the nod.
Yeah, I just want to add to the fact that rape is being used as a weapon of subjugation, not only in Tigray, but also all across in the country. If you are from an ethnic group that opposes a unitarist and centralized governance, then you will be met with different kinds of harrowing war tactics, including and particularly weaponized rape. So I just wanted to add to the fact that also women and young girls in Oromia are being gang raped, not only by Ethiopian members of the army, but we also hear reports of Eritrean troops being deep in Oromia committing the same kind of genocidal crimes that they have been and continue to commit in Tigray.
I want to bring in here Mary Clark, and Mary Clark makes a point of how difficult it is for women in Ethiopia anyway to report rape, sexual abuse. Here she is. Have a listen to this, Madia, and then come off the back of this video.
Rape and other forms of sexual violence are so taboo in this region, like in many other places, that women and girls are afraid to report. But what we do know is that the few safe houses are completely overwhelmed. What's needed now is an investment in local Tigrayan organizations who are the first responders to this crisis.
Yeah, so I completely agree with that. We do need to engage local organizations. I mean, one of the things that we have seen, of course, at the International Rescue Committee is the widespread underreporting of these crimes just because of the stigma attached. So there's really no real way of getting an idea of the scale of what's happening just because of the underreporting. But given the reports that we're hearing from others, the situation is so widespread. So I'm scared to think how widespread in reality the situation is. And I think it's also important at this point just to point out that there are other ways that women are suffering because of this conflict. I mean, one of the things that we found in our gender analysis that we carried out at the International Rescue Committee was we found out that women are having to engage, for example, in sexually exploitative relationships just in order to be able to survive or feed their children for very little amounts of money, up to $1.25, just to be able to feed their children. So as I said, women are, bearing the brunt of this conflict.
I'm just looking at this headline. Over 90% of people in war-hit Tigray need food aid. UN's World Food Programme says hunger levels are increasing in the northern Ethiopian region as it appeals for $203 million to scale up the response. All right, so there are multiple problems going on. As as always happens when there's a conflict situation. Let me go to YouTube. I'm going to put this to you, Meaza. Dawit says on YouTube, tens of thousands of prisoners were released from Tigray prisons. It looks complicated to me. Who is killing and raping is difficult to answer. Is it?
It really is not. It really isn't. All it takes is to listen to the survivors, to listen to the victims. And the people of Tigray, particularly the women of Tigray, know who is doing what to them. And like more than 100 times, they have told us that Ethiopian troops, Amhara militias, and also soldiers from the Ethiopian National Army are the ones raping them, violating their body, and telling them that they're doing it in order to cleanse their blood, in order to make sure that the Tigrean womb never gives birth. So it's not really difficult. All it takes is to listen to the survivors. And in order for all of this to come to light, there needs to be an independent investigation led by the UN and UN only, so that the international community could really see what the Tigrayan people, particularly the women, have been going through for the past over 200 days of active genocidal war, and hold those people that are inflicting the pain accountable.
So one of the things that we were asking for this program is not just relate these horrific stories, but asking who is to be held accountable, who is going to help the civilians of Tigray who need outside help if they're not getting it from within Ethiopia. Let me ask that and put that to you, Sena. Where do you think the help should come from?
Fahmi, that's interesting. And I see the UN is doing a joint investigation with the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. Per se, for us, Ethiopian Human Rights Commission is extremely biased. And I'll give you one example. In 2020, when Hachalu was killed, murdered, and within 24 hours, over 100 people died. Ethiopian Human Rights Commission took about 6 months to come up with the report. Last November, they conducted a visit about 21 prisons, and they found women, children ages 5 months until 10 years old. They found women in each of these prisons, and they've seen a lot of violence and torture and all of this. Like Meaza said, that, I mean, it's obvious who's committed this, and for the UN and for the US even to take in organizations such as Ethiopian Human Rights Commission to be part of the investigation when they have covered up by the issue of Tigray. The way I saw it was covered up because the way it came out first and the way it came out eventually unveiled is a little bit different. So who should be really accountable? Who should do this investigating? I mean, unless this is because Africa and Africa problem for African solution for Africa problem is a joke, because the perpetrators is the Abiy administration. He purposely have sent soldiers, have sent a military into Tigray, into Oromia to commit this very act, along with the Eritrean soldiers. Eritrean soldiers are in Oromia deep since last July. We, our organization, talked to State Department about this issue. We know they are in Bali. We know they are in Guji, in different parts of the country, along with Amhara militia. So to even ask that who should investigate, I mean, it's obvious. Like Meaza said, listen to the victim. It's not complicated. It's straightforward. I'm pretty sure the victim can speak for themselves. To even include Ethiopian government as to investigate itself, as I think is just injustice by itself.
This is the UN Secretary General's spokesperson. This is what he has to say. Meaza, come off the back of his statement. Let's have a listen.
Serious violations of international humanitarian and human rights law must be promptly investigated and the perpetrators brought to justice. We, along with our partners, are ready to engage with military commanders to ensure protection of civilians.
I wanted to answer to the previous question. Where should the help come from, and who needs to be held accountable? The help should come from the international community, particularly from the UN Security Council, because it's the UN Security Council that can impose strong punitive measures upon both the Ethiopian government and the Eritrean government, so that all the genocidal war could stop, but at the same time, the suffering and the pain of Tigrayan women could at least get a glimpse of justice. And who needs to be held accountable are the people that are continuing to inflict an unimaginable level of suffering on the Tigrayan people, including the women. These are forces from the Amhara region, these are forces from Eritrea, and also from the Ethiopian National Army. But overall, the number one enemy of the people of Tigray is the Ethiopian state by itself. It's the Ethiopian state that enabled Eritrean troops to infringe the sovereignty of the country, to enter into Tigray and to loot, rape, and kill the Tigrayan people. So it's obvious who needs to be held accountable, the Ethiopian government primarily, but also all of its cronies. But at the same time, the help needs to come from the UN Security Council.
So this is a thought from Denat, who put this on YouTube for this conversation. Can we reasonably expect the UN and also the Human Rights Council to investigate these crimes to be transparent and independent? Can we reasonably expect that? Sena, you go first.
I mean, here's the thing. This is the way I see. You got to pick what's the base. And at this point, non-Ethiopian government, the Ethiopian system, I just mentioned to you the issue of current Abiy, since he came to power 3 years ago, on the back of Oromo protests, 5,000 Oromo young men died, and the rest of them, as the U.S. government have put out, they are either in prison, they're dead, or they have joined the armed struggle because they lost hope. That, to me, first of all, the issue needs to be looked at it from a bigger angle, and to make sure that you cannot address exclusively and without really looking at it. So the UN, can they address this? When you look at it, who do we have? I mean, UN is the best we got. I think they could, if there's anybody that could do that, I think the US would be the UN would be the best. International community would be the second. And the third, I mean, I have zero hope, as I said earlier. The Ethiopian government is perpetuator. They have committed this on Oromos for 3 years before they got to the war in November, and nobody's speaking about that. And we must really speak about the rape, the woman, the torture, the mass killing, the mass imprisonment of political prisoners. Over 50,000 political prisoners lay in Oromia, and nobody's talking about that. There's women being raped, young men, boys aged 10 being raped in Oromia by Ethiopian soldiers. I think the UN is the best, and obviously Tigray is, there's a small community, and the Abiy regime, along with Amhara and Tigray, is to really want to wipe out, and whatever leftover, they want to cleanse them.
The UN doesn't just walk into countries, right? They have to be invited. They can't just do an investigation. Isn't that the biggest challenge? And weren't we told several months ago that the conflict in the Tigray region was over?
But that's the challenge, I mean, I'm saying, like, when you have a regime like Abiy, who's never elected, I mean, he is there in power by force, never elected, he never came to power through armed struggle. He's in power in the back of Oromo youth, Oromo Keros, who are in prison or dead. But to really negotiate with such a dictator, I don't even know what to call him. I mean, to legitimize Abiy as a leader that the UN should negotiate with, that's to me mind-boggling too. But I understand.
Right.
I understand where they have to negotiate.
Yeah, but it was at one point that you were a big fan of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, were you not?
You know what, Fami? I must admit it indeed, because, for 20 years we protested here in diaspora for change. For 20 years we lost our life behind, just like now, working day now to make a noise. And 3 years ago, Abiy came to here. I met him several times, apologized and sought for forgiveness. We was part of the regime for 27 years. That made us refugee in America. My parents was in prison. My brother, my relative, my uncle was killed by previous government. And today, unfortunately, he turned around to bite the hands that fed him. But you know what? But he committed worst type of crime, and the UN really, really need to push. I mean, how long can we wait? I mean, what needs to happen in Tigray? Because in Tigray, the situation is blindly seen. Everybody, the camera is there, they're seeing it, but nobody is seeing what's happening in Oromia. Nobody's talking about the prisoners. Oromia hold the largest prisoners, and all of those prisoners are Oromo. Women, young children. Ethiopian Human Rights Commission put out a statement in May 6th. They visited 21 prisons. They found children age 5, they've been in prison since July of last year. So it's very painful. Yes, we obviously root for him because we got tired after protesting for 27 years that we thought this man have learned something. In the EPDRF gave him a chance to transition the country into democracy.
All right.
But eventually. Yes.
All right, so Sena, Meaza, Madia, the reason we did this show is because we wanted to ask is a very practical question. We've seen the horrific allegations, the stories, the accounts from the women who have been raped. How to stop Ethiopia's weaponized sexual violence? That was the big overall question that we were trying to wrestle with. This is Christina Serra with one answer.
Women and girls' lives have been taken from them. Some may die from their physical and psychological injuries, or even worse, from HIV and AIDS. Tigray is losing its anchor. What is a country without the women who sustain its communities? How do you bring a person that has died back to life? You help put them back together again. You give them their power back through health, security, justice, and resources to start afresh. The women and girls cannot depend on leaders who have instructed their soldiers to commit acts of sexual violence. The international community must step up and provide them with the desperate security and protection that they need and will need for years to come.
Meaza, there are lots of people who are suggesting this is the solution. These are the people who we need to come in and help with these atrocities that are happening to civilians. Have a look here on my laptop. This tweet. Look into the AU. All boxes are checked for genocide, starvation, rape, door-to-door execution, looting, destruction, homes, heritage sites, burning crops, ethnic cleansing. This is an opinion, but we're hearing lots of reports that fall into this kind of category. This is me editorializing here. What is the African Union doing to play a role in protecting women and children? The African Union is right there, right? The home of the African Union is in Addis.
Yeah, the African Union for all purpose has failed the people of Tigray. They have sided with the genocidal regime in Ethiopia and have been seen multiple times justifying the raping and the looting and the destruction of Tigray. So the African Union at this point, the best thing they can do for the people of Tigray, particularly for the women that are suffering from the weaponized rape, is to refer the case to the ICC or to the UN and ask an international intervention. I understand sovereignty could be an issue, and that's why, Femi, earlier you were talking to how UN cannot just walk into a country and try to stop a genocide. However, what's happening to the people of Tigray is not an internal matter. This is not an issue where intergovernmental organizations should talk about sovereignty, because for all purpose, the Ethiopian government infringing its own sovereignty by inviting a foreign enemy to help in its mission to exterminate the people of Tigray. So the talk of sovereignty has been gone long time ago. But the UN has a particular responsibility to protect marginalized groups, vulnerable people that are facing a genocide, a state-sponsored genocide. So the UN has all mandate and moral obligation to intervene and stop the ongoing genocide.
So I just want to bring up a statement here. It comes from the United States government, from the White House, basically. And this statement came out at the very end of May. And it's acknowledging what is going on in northern Ethiopia, large-scale human rights abuses taking place in Tigray, including widespread sexual violence. So it talks about it, it's noted it, it's seen it, but then what is the action, Sena?
I mean, the U.S. have really taken a leadership, especially it took a very long time for the U.S. to act and for the State Department, because the war broke out in November. And this is a good start. But as Meaza said, that the sovereignty issue really ended a long time ago when the regime openly declared war on its own people, invited foreign military to intervene. And I think what's missing from the conversation is the bigger one I mentioned to you, Fahmi, is the issue of Oromia, because Abiy have started this violence against Oromos 3 years ago. Amnesty International have put out a report in May of last year where they documented count after count of extrajudiciary of killing children aged 15. And, you know, the Biden administration have did a wonderful job, but right now it's time to act. I mean, every day we are waiting, we're missing, we're losing lives.
Talking about running out of time, I know that feeling. Madia, I want to bring the conversation back to you. We started with you. I'm going to bring it back to you because, again, how do you stop weaponizing sexual violence? How do you stop that?
Well, we spoke at the beginning of the show about how gender-based violence in humanitarian settings are woefully underfunded. And so I would suggest, you know, the G7 summit, for example, would provide an ideal opportunity for renewed commitment to gender equality in humanitarian settings. Listening to bodies like the G7 Gender Equality Advisory Council is a tangible way to include such perspectives. But these conversations have been happening for years about how to prevent rape as a weapon of war. And local women's organizations have the unique ability to be able to reach and empower women and girls in their own communities every day. And investments at a grassroots level have a much greater impact. So without adequate funding to support these organizations, commitments made at the global level will make little to no difference on the ground. So funding is equally important.
Thank you so much. We started the conversation with you, we ended it with you. Madia, thank you. Saina, thank you. Meaza, thank you so much. YouTube and on Twitter, appreciate your comments and being part of today's programme. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching, everybody.